Abuse of authority. That is something that happens all the time, every day, in workplaces all across the United States. People find themselves in a position of authority or responsibility or a little bit of power, and it goes to their head, and they get this idea that they can lord it over people and threaten people and create an intimidating workplace environment just because they've been given a little bit of responsibility. We're a pretty small group right now. We have a total of 6 people. There's me, there's Dan, there's Aaron, there's Casey, there's Brent, and there's Teresa. So I think we have a pretty good handle of what's going on at our place, and abuse of authority, as far as I can tell, is not a problem. I think if it were to become a problem, we'd figure it out pretty quick. We know pretty much what's going on, how people relate to each other, or at least we think we do. But suppose our organization were to expand some. You have people all the time who are completely unfit, and they get put in these positions of authority, and they decide that they have some kind of right to abuse that authority. Well, in that scenario, the thing that would get a manager or supervisor in hot water really quick would be abuse of authority. Anything that creates a threatening work environment where people feel insecure in their jobs because this manager, this supervisor, are the way they are. And if you've ever worked any number of jobs in the United States, you have certainly seen this. One thing that we will not have, should we expand, toleration for, is abuse of authority. That would get a supervisory person in hot water quicker than anything. And this happens in many ways. Sometimes it's very subtle. A lot of times it's email communication suggesting that bad things are going to happen if this other thing doesn't happen. And from time to time, you do have managers and supervisors who will get it in for a particular person, and they go about attempting to build a case, going on a little witch hunt. This can take the form of weekly reports that their subordinate is required to file, and a lot of times the manager or supervisor is attempting to demonstrate that they aren't really doing anything. This person that they have a vendetta against. I have seen that before. One thing that happens a lot of times with managers and supervisors is they go into simply a mode of, protecting their own interest, and part of that is lording it over and making sure they have thumb on everybody in their department. I knew one with one organization who did this by attempting to restrict communication. She didn't want people in her department communicating with other departments. She wanted everything to stay in the department because she didn't want people in other departments to know what was going on in hers. And that is something that would absolutely not be tolerated. No one can deny another person the right to communicate with anybody else in the organization. If you were to work for this organization, you have the right to communicate with anyone else in the organization, and no one is allowed to stop you. That is something that would absolutely not be allowed. One thing that any management or supervisory person would have to understand, should they come to work for us, is simply this. If you don't like people going over your head, then you may not be very happy here. Because those of us who control this organization feel that we don't feel it, we know we have a right to understand everything that goes on in this organization. You can't attempt to create this little fiefdom and have things isolated within that department and all kinds of nonsense going on and us not find out about it, because we have a right to find out about anything that goes on in this organization. We have the right to communicate with anybody we want to, and anybody in the organization can contact us, even if it would involve going over a manager's or supervisor's head. because the whole point of management and supervision is to do what we want them to do. It's not just to have their own little independent kingdom and run things the way they want it. They have to comply with directives and with the company policy. Now, say you had a situation where some supervisor is on a witch hunt, and it's obvious that they're out to get this particular person, and so they just go on a witch hunt trying to compile all kinds of paperwork, and it's obvious what's going on. They're just out to get this person. So they come forward and say, we got to do something about this one because here's a stack of evidence that they did this, that, or the other. Now, if it's obvious that they've been on a witch hunt, this is about what's going to happen. The information that they present is going to be deleted and destroyed, and they themselves are going to face disciplinary action, probably a week's suspension or more. And that's going to come with the provision that if copies of this information were to resurface later, that damn well better not happen. If at a later date this information that you've used as a witch hunt comes to the surface again because you have kept copies, which you're absolutely prohibited to do, then you're going to be in serious trouble and would be looking at a month's suspension and probably a demotion, if not worse. We don't want people under stress and strain here. We want people who are suitable for what we do, and then we want the work environment to be a positive environment as we all work together to achieve the same thing. And a lot of that has to do with not keeping all kinds of secrets from the people who work for us. I've said it before and I'll say it again. If I am under stress, well, if they are under stress, it's going to be because I am under stress, and they're going to know exactly why. They're going to know what's going on, so we can figure out how to work it out and go forward. It's just amazing how people who get promoted to be in charge of a broom closet sometimes think that they are way up here and everybody else is way down here. So you have a person who works in an office, maybe they supervise other people, and they think that just because a trash can about this big happens to get full, that they can get on the phone and call somebody to come empty their damn trash when they know very well where the dumpster is, or the carpet in their office needs vacuumed. They think they can call somebody. Nobody around here is too good to do that, unless they're ill or recovering from surgery or not feeling well or something like that. But nobody is that much better than anybody else. There are some of us who have hierarchical authority, and that is necessary for decision-making processes and strategic planning, but just lording it over people for the sake of that is no good. And we wouldn't tolerate managers and supervisors threatening people without a very good reason. We'd want to know what's going on. Now, if I were to suspect that there was some issue between a supervisor and an employee, what I would do would be call the employee in and say, how's Joe treating you? Just how is he as a supervisor? What's going on? And I know there's a problem, but this person doesn't give me a straight answer. You know what that means? That means a lot more digging, because I'm going to get to the bottom of that. And if everybody in this company has to be called in and asked what's going on between Joe and Bill, if Joe was abusing his authority, I'm going to find out about it one way or another. I'll probably suspect it anyway. But abuse of authority is something that will not be tolerated. One of the most important things that anyone in a position of power can learn is the ability to use restraint. Not to be pulling the trigger, not to have a hair trigger, knee-jerk reactions to everything, to use discretion and restraint in the use of authority. And that means dignity and respect for the people that work under them. Brazen disrespect for subordinates will not be tolerated. Mistreatment of subordinates will not be tolerated. Creating an environment where they dread coming into work every day because they're afraid of what Supervisor Joe's going to do, that is not going to be tolerated. So, anybody who might come to work for us in that kind of capacity in the future needs to understand abuse of authority will not be tolerated. That will get them in trouble quicker than anything, because we seek to maintain a positive work environment.